So Michigan fires head coach Sherrone Moore, and I'm not going to get into what's exactly gone on there because it's still an ongoing investigation. But my reaction is, or what they should do moving forward is, I think they got to get Kalen DeBoer, Jesse Minter, one of those two guys. I think it would be an awesome hire, especially Kalen DeBoer. I think it'd be a really good fit. Jesse Minter, if people remember, he was the defensive coordinator a couple years ago for Michigan when they won the national championship. The best hire Michigan can make would be Mike Macdonald, but Mike Macdonald, now the head coach in Seattle has things rolling in Seattle. They're not going to get Mike Macdonald. That would be. I was joking with my buddies. I guess I'm going to keep dreaming. But Mike Macdonald would be awesome. I actually said they should have got Mike Macdonald a few years ago when Harbaugh was flirting with the NFL. But if you remember, Mike Macdonald went right to Baltimore, took that head coaching job in Baltimore, or took the defensive coordinator job in Baltimore, went back to the Baltimore Ravens after just the short stint at Michigan in 2021 as the DC. But yeah, Michigan, Jesse Minter, Kalen DeBoer would be a great hire. Hopefully Bryce Underwood would stay. I fall in the boat that I believe Bryce Underwood's going to keep getting better for Michigan. I think he's going to improve. The worry I had with Bryce Underwood was, a lot of times when you bring in a 5-star quarterback, you see it right away. Like people forget, people still remember but don't talk about this, that like Trevor, if you're a 5-star quarterback, if you're really that good, which I'm not saying Bryce Underwood's not good, but if you're really that guy, you come in and you dominate right away. Look at Trevor Lawrence when he came into Clemson. Dominated right away. Kelly Bryant went down with the injury. You go look at a lot of 5-star quarterbacks. When you put them in, you saw it right away. You're like, yep, that guy's a superstar in the making. Yep. With Bryce Underwood, it's been, it was a shaky year one, but for some reason I am optimistic that he will improve. He is a talented guy. Right now, it's like Joel Klatt talked about, early on in the season. He's a good thrower of the football, has to develop. The game looks fast for him, misses some open receivers, just doesn't always play loose, doesn't always look confident with what he's seeing. But yeah, those are some of the things that stand out, what's holding Underwood back. How much was that the coaching this year? But a lot of times at the game, I was at the Purdue game, and just in a lot of games, he just misses open receivers. Game looks slow for him, in the pocket. He just doesn't look confident at times when he's dropping back in the pocket. But yeah, Kalen DeBoer would be an awesome hire. I'm glad that is. My buddy was telling me this. I'm glad that's true, that he was interested in Michigan a few years ago. But yeah, DeBoer, a really good coach. And like the point a lot of people are making with Kalen DeBoer, it's kind of hard to follow up Nick Saban. It's kind of like like they keep talking about, it's kind of hard to be the guy that follows up the guy. What are the odds? Even if DeBoer went on to have a phenomenal career at Alabama, say he coached there the next, I don't know, how long was Nick Saban in Alabama? Was he there 07 to 2023? So he was there. What was Nick Saban there? So that would have been, what is that? Not the best. What was Nick Saban there? 16, 17 years. So say DeBoer hypothetically was able to coach it. He's 51 years old. If he was hypothetically able to coach at Bama another 15, 20 years, let's say he won, I don't know, it's all hypotheticals, a long shot. Say he won, even if he won 3 or 4 national championships, a lot of people would be saying, what a great career, but people would be like, well, not as good as, maybe they wouldn't say these exact words, not as good as Nick Saban, but a lot of people would be like, yeah, that was a really good, he sustained success there. He did a really nice job, but Nick Saban, legend, but yeah, bottom line, it's hard to be the guy that follows up the guy. At Michigan, I don't want to, keep taking what other people say, but I was listening to Steve Dace made the point that, it's easier at Michigan right now because Harbaugh won a national championship at 23. Sherrone Moore was already the guy that followed up the guy. So now you can be the guy with, the reset button hit. So, yeah, I'm excited. It's like I was just talking with my dad. There was about, they were talking about this on Detroit Sports Talk too. 97 won the ticket. There was about 50%. I would say that, yeah, there's probably about 50% of Michigan fans that were okay with what happened today. Sherrone Moore getting fired. Obviously not under these circumstances, but they were okay with just moving on. Because, look, I was disappointed. Look, I don't want to rip on, the job he did as a coach too badly. But I was disappointed in the Nebraska giving up the Hail Mary, running out the clock in the Michigan State game, not throwing a Hail Mary. There's just the issue with Sherrone Moore, and I was talking about this with some people, is like Sherrone Moore has no MO. And what I mean by this, he has no trait that he hangs his hat on. Like when you think of good coaches, like you think of, let's say Nick Saban, you think, defensive mind. You think of Urban Meyer, master motivator. I throw in recruiter. Or you think of any good coach. Mike. We'll say Mike McDonald. Think of just a tough, coaches his teams. Makes tough physical teams. Good. Line of scrimmage play, effective running the ball. A lot of times you can affiliate a good coach with one good aspect. When you think of Sherrone Moore, what do you think of? A guy that claps on the sideline, a guy that waves his hands up and down. Sherrone Moore had no MO. Was he a good recruiter? I guess, but like they were talking about, there's a lot of people that can recruit well at Michigan. Just by brand recognition alone, Michigan. If you just went around just telling recruits, we're Michigan, you probably could bring in the top 20. Michigan has a built-in top 20, 25 class every year pretty much. So, but yeah, DeBoer, good hire. DeBoer would be a good hire. I saw he's the Vegas betting favorite to be Michigan's next coach. So yeah, I would be excited to see it. It'd be interesting to see. I kind of would want to see Michigan football. I'm just very interested to see how things would play out for them with a non-Michigan guy. And what I mean by that is like Harbaugh was a Michigan guy. He had Michigan connections. I know when he came back, he hadn't been there in a long time. Same with Sherrone Moore. He was a, I guess you wouldn't call him Sherrone Moore like a big Michigan guy, but he was, he was an assistant there too. And, they've had, like, Lloyd Carr was a Michigan guy. He was assistant under Bo. Gary Moeller was a Michigan guy. I'd be interested to see how Michigan does. I guess we kind of saw this a little bit with Rich Rod. He was kind of the outside, odd man out hire, however you want to refer to it. How Michigan does with a non-Michigan guy. A guy like Kalen DeBoer, who really has no connection to the university, except that he played against Michigan in the national championship, and that's not really a connection. That was just they played against him. So, yeah, Kalen DeBoer, Jesse Minter, Jed Fish, some names. Marcus Freeman would be a good hire. Would he want to leave Notre Dame? Brian Kelly, people are throwing that out too. That would be interesting. I like Brian Kelly, but I don't know. To me, Marcus Freeman, Jed Fish, Jesse Minter. To me, you have to go after. I would probably do it in this order. You would have to go after DeBoer and Jesse Minter. What's the expression? Make them say no. Make DeBoer and Jesse Minter say no. Yeah, Jesse Minter though, he did a phenomenal job at Michigan as a DC. Guy that really knows how to make adjustments. You look at, he was a huge part in how they beat Alabama in that Rose Bowl. The guy just makes adjustments. Look at what he's doing now with Harbaugh in the NFL as a DC with the LA Chargers. Just a guy that, just a really good defensive coordinator. How it would translate for him as a head coach, that in college, that might be a different story. Because, he hasn't really, he's never been a head coach in college or in the NFL. He's a defensive coordinator at Vanderbilt. Forget exactly what year, that was going back a ways. And then, the defensive coordinator, he was with the Ravens. I forget what his title was. He was the Ravens a few years ago. And then, obviously, the defensive coordinator in Michigan in 2023. But, I'll wrap with that. Michigan fires Sherrone Moore, Kalen DeBoer, Jesse Minter, some of the notable Jed Fish, some of the notable names, some of the betting favorites to be the next head coach. You got other names floating out there like Kenny Dillingham and Marcus Freeman, Brian Kelly. It's always just funny to kind of just keep throwing out names for the next head coach. I'm even hearing like John Gruden and stuff, and It's just kind of funny to just keep throwing out names. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Michigan does. And do they hire a guy outside of Michigan? More than likely it could happen. But yeah, how would Michigan football fare hiring a guy outside of Michigan? Last time they've really done that was back in, you got to go back to 2008, really, with Rich Rodriguez.